Hey everybody, Rob Maurer here, and today we're going to be talking about some rumors on a $25,000 Tesla. We also have an update on the Apple car situation, some news on reports of sudden unintended acceleration from Tesla vehicles, an update on the standard range and 7-seat Model Y that we talked about yesterday, and we have a couple other things as well. And then of course we have to talk about the stock. Tesla today closing at $880 per share, gaining 7.8% on the day compared to the Nasdaq's gain of 1%. Not a bad first week to start the year for Tesla. We closed December 31st at about $705 per share. So the first week here of 2021, we've had about a 25% gain in the stock. As I mentioned yesterday, Tesla at that point had tied its own record with 10 consecutive trading days in a row finishing positive. With the green day today, Tesla has now set a new all-time record, 11 trading days in a row finishing in the green. So we'll see what next week holds if Tesla can continue that. Right now in after hours, it's down about 1.5% as we get close to the end of after hours trading. So Tesla will have some ground to make up if it wants to extend that record to 12 days on Monday. Definitely some interesting things to look out for next week, which we'll talk about towards the end of this episode. All right, so the big news for today is that there is a report out of China on Tesla's plans at Giga Shanghai. This report is coming from Sina.com, and in translation, they write, quote, "On January 8th, it was learned from relevant channels that Tesla's third model will be produced in the Shanghai Superfactory. It is reported that the new car has been approved as early as September 2020, and product verification is expected to be completed in March this year. At the same time, the positioning of the new car will be lower than the Model 3, and the price may be controlled at around 160,000 yuan." Later in the report, they write that this new car may be positioned as a compact hatchback on the Model 3 chassis, and that the price could be between 150,000 and 200,000 yuan, which would be a range of about $23,000 up to $31,000. And that first mention of 160,000, that would be very close to $25,000. Most interestingly, they say, quote, "Mass production and delivery will be realized in 2022, end quote. So that's kind of the full report. We don't have a lot to go off of here. We don't know the sources. We don't know how reputable they are, but they're saying a third model from Giga Shanghai, which would be third to originally the Model 3, second the Model Y, this would be a third, was approved in September 2020, right around the time of Battery Day. Then they're also saying that product verification will happen this March, and manufacturing will begin next year in 2022. So let's rewind a little bit and let's look at what Elon Musk said about this topic back at Battery Day in September. First, he said, quote, "We're confident that long-term, we can design and manufacture a compelling $25,000 electric vehicle." Then he added to that, quote, "I think probably, like I said, about 3 years from now, we're confident we can make a very compelling $25,000 electric vehicle that's also fully autonomous," end quote. All right, so we all know Elon Musk's timelines. In the past, it's been a good idea to, add a little bit of cushion onto those timelines, but lately Tesla has been doing a lot better in terms of their external communication. I think we can sort of compartmentalize that to some extent and put autonomy timelines in one bucket, separate from vehicle or production timelines in another bucket. Of course, on production, Tesla did a great job with their annual guidance in 2020, even with the pandemic pretty much hitting that, and they were ahead of their announced timelines for the Model Y by about 6 months. So there is a bit of a precedent there starting to form of Tesla being ahead of their external communication, but strongly weighing on that point on the other hand is that 2020 has come and gone. We still don't have the 2020 Roadster. We still do not have the Semi. Plenty of good reasons for both, but it's also not like Tesla is overachieving the timeline on all of their projects. And then again, I think on autonomy, that's sort of its own separate conversation. But getting back to the $25,000 Tesla, well, Elon said 3 years, that was September of 2020. So if we go exactly 3 years from there, we're looking at September of 2023. That's only a little bit over 2.5 years from now, and that would only be 9 months past 2022, which is the rumor here. Tesla beat the Model Y timeline by 6 months, you could even say 9 months, because I believe the original guidance was late 2020, but they started delivering those at the start of Q2 2020. With that as context, I don't think it's completely implausible that Tesla may be targeting sometime late 2022 for a vehicle that they've externally communicated would be sometime around September 2023. I also think given the size of the market and the cheaper cost of manufacturing in China, that Gigafactory Shanghai is probably the likely place that we're first going to see the $25,000 Tesla appear from. Maybe it shows up there in 2022 and then makes its way to Giga Berlin and Giga Texas in 2023. If that were the roadmap, it'd probably make the most sense to communicate that as just saying, yep, in about 3 years, we'll have this $25,000 Tesla. If that ends up being the case, I think we can look back in hindsight and say, oh, it was pretty clear Elon has kind of been priming for that for a while, because ever since the announcement of Giga Shanghai, he said, yep, we're going to do local design in China for products that are going to be shipped worldwide. We've also, for the last couple of years now, started to see Tesla develop this roadmap of starting production on vehicles, new vehicles in Shanghai in Q4, and starting delivering those right away in Q1 of the following year. Last year that happened with the Model 3. This year, identical situation with the Model Y. That timeline works really well for the financial reporting. As Tesla grows, optimizing that's not going to be quite as important. But maybe what we're seeing here, these reports, could be from Tesla lining up suppliers for mid-2022, planning to go into production sort of Q4 2022, and then really start deliveries Q1 2023. From a battery perspective, I think that timeline is probably pretty close. Tesla has said that they plan to internally produce 100 gigawatt hours of batteries in 2022. If they are actually able to do that, they're going from, pretty close to zero in 2021, or at least the start of 2021, to 100 gigawatt hours in 2022. What does that sort of a growth rate imply for 2023 then? You might be looking at, 200 gigawatt hours or something close to that in 2023. That would be enough for 2.7 million 75 kilowatt hour packs. And remember, that would be internal production. You have to add probably another million in terms of capacity for batteries from external suppliers. So maybe all those can be absorbed by the Cybertruck and the Semi. I would need to run some math on that, but if not, you don't just spool up this additional million vehicle capacity $25,000 Tesla line. You realistically probably need to start the early stages of that S-curve at least a bit in 2022. So I think this is my way of just walking through sort of a plausibility analysis of this report. I don't have expectations that Tesla's going to start delivering a $25,000 Tesla out of Shanghai next year, but I'm also not ready to completely write off this rumor like we're able to do sometimes. Oh, and sort of a final thought on sandbagging timelines. Earlier this week, of course, we talked about Elon Musk's winky face reply to Galley asking how hard he sandbagged the Plaid Model S timeline. When did we get that Plaid Model S timeline? Battery day. So definitely curious to hear people's thoughts on this rumor and the $25,000 Tesla timeline. Let me know in the comments. All right, next up here, we got a report on the Apple car. This is coming from CNBC last night. And it's kind of funny because Hyundai actually made a statement admitting that they are potentially working on an electric vehicle with Apple, which if you work with Apple, you should probably know that they wouldn't be exactly thrilled about you disclosing. So these comments from a Hyundai representative came after a report from Korea Economic Daily that said that Apple had reached out to Hyundai and that Hyundai was reviewing terms on possible electric vehicle production as well as battery development. As for timeline, hold on to your hats here because they said that the car could potentially be released in 2027. Potentially. Anyway, this Hyundai representative told CNBC, quote, "We understand that Apple is in discussion with a variety of global automakers, including Hyundai Motor. As the discussion is in its early stage, nothing has been decided." End quote. Whoops. Well, per CNBC, Hyundai later released an updated statement that avoided the mention of Apple and said, quote, "We've been receiving requests of potential cooperation from diverse companies regarding development of autonomous driving EVs, but no decisions have been made as discussions are in early stage." End quote. So my feelings here are relatively unchanged. I don't think it's too surprising to hear that Apple is reaching out to these other automakers and discussing possibilities. Even if Apple has their own ambitions, it's probably still wise to at least see what partnership opportunities may be out there. And like I said before, my point of view is that we're not going to see an Apple-branded electric vehicle anytime this decade. I think for them, it probably makes a lot more sense to work closely with an OEM. Apple can provide a lot of the software. They can continue to expand on what they're starting with CarPlay, and that could maybe give them a path to expand on their autonomous driving aspirations. But by 2027, that path is going to be, very narrow, if not completely closed. So I really just don't see an Apple car happening. Apple software in cars, sure, that's already happening today, but that's a far cry from what all these articles about an Apple car are talking about. All right, next up here, this is kind of an extension of the live stream yesterday on the Model Y, the standard range, and the 7-seat. First off, we did get a new official photo from Tesla's Twitter account of the Model Y seats today. And in this photo, you can definitely see how compressed things are. Definitely don't be planning to put adults back there, at least frequently, maybe not at all, but should be pretty solid for kids. And in the shot, you can see that there are a couple of cup holders back there in between the two seats. On that 7-seat configuration, a few people also noted yesterday that the 7-seat version is not available if you're ordering a performance Model Y. I think internationally there was a little bit of variance on that yesterday. I think that's been changed now, but I did have a listener that did order one of those, but Tesla had told them that the 7-seat wasn't available for performance because of handling reasons. So maybe accurate, maybe not, take it for what it's worth, but that is what this specific customer was told. As for the standard range Model Y, we did talk quite a bit yesterday about how this was a bit of a surprise, as Elon had previously said that that range just wasn't long enough. They really viewed the minimum range as 300 miles. Got some comments saying that he actually had said 250, so I did have a chance today to go back and look at this. So here's the quote from the Q2 earnings call in response to my question about the elimination of the standard range Model Y, the standard range Model S, and the Model X, asking if that meant that they were no longer battery constrained. Elon said, quote, "With regard to passenger vehicles, I think the new normal for range is going to be, just in US EPA terms, approximately 300 miles. So I think people will really come to expect that as some number close to 300 miles as normal. That's a standard expectation because you need to take into account, like, is it very hot outside or very cold? Are you driving up a mountain with a full load? And it's, people don't want to have to get to the destination with like 10 miles range. They want some reasonable margins. So I think 300 is going to be really close to 300 is going to be a new normal. Call it 500 kilometers, basically, roughly," end quote. And remember, this is in direct response to a question on the standard range Model Y, which has come in with an EPA range of 244 miles, right around where we would have expected it based on the standard range Model 3. So no matter what we say, this is definitely a clear shift in the strategy from what Tesla had in mind a few months back. A lot of people had the good call out that this could be to position the Model Y in terms of pricing slightly below where the Ford Mach-E is priced at, right around where the ID.4 is planning to be priced at for the US. And I think that's probably a good call, makes sense. The Ford Mach-E starts right around $43,000, estimated range on that version, 230 miles. The key difference here, well, many key differences here, but from a margin perspective, the key difference here is that Tesla's standard range Model Y probably has a battery capacity of around 55 kilowatt hours, while the Mach-E with less range has a battery pack of 68 kilowatt hours. So much less efficient compared to the Model Y and much more difficult for Ford to make any money on that. Ford, though, does have the advantage of the $7,500 federal tax credit still, but of course that could be subject to change with the new administration. Anyway, I do think that's a valid point, but at the same time, I think Tesla could have introduced a long-range single-motor Model Y for, let's say, $44,000 or $45,000, completely blowing away the specs of these other competing electric vehicles for just a few $1,000 premium, maybe as low as a couple thousand. And I think the consensus is that the Model Y is selling at a pretty decent margin. Tesla has on numerous occasions said that the cost of manufacturing should be very similar to the Model 3, and yet there is still that significant pricing premium. So I don't think it's strictly about just doing whatever they can to get a lower price vehicle in the market. Maybe that was one part of the goal, and then, they just figured, well, if we're going to do that, we might as well just offer it with the standard range versus the long range and save some money on batteries, especially if there is that production constraint. No need right now to put that far of a superior product on the market. Might as well just wait a little bit and have that in our back pocket to introduce. I have to imagine the logic is somewhere along those lines versus just being like, oh, we have to get lower than this, and even though we didn't want to, we're going to introduce the standard range plus because that's our only way of getting this low price. I don't think that's the case. I hope that's not the case. Hoping it's just a reconsideration of battery allocation and optimization of that, but I think we'll find out more about that when we see the margins for Q4. All right, last couple of quick things here for today. We do have an update from the National Highway and Traffic Safety Administration on some complaints that Tesla vehicles were exhibiting sudden unintended acceleration. We've talked about this before, but NHTSA has now closed their review on this and they have found no defect. So no big surprise there. As we do turn the page and look ahead towards next week, all eyes are going to be on Fremont and the SNX production lines, which are scheduled to restart production Monday, January 11th. So maybe this weekend or maybe on Monday we get some news on a refresh, or maybe we hear nothing and we will have to keep an eye on sources on the ground near Fremont. But either way, it's something we're going to be paying attention to. And then just to wrap up today, the biggest news of the day, GM has redesigned their logo. I hate it. And with that, we'll wrap it up for today. As always, thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and sign up for notifications. You can also find me on Twitter at Tesla Podcast. And we'll see you on Monday for the January 11th episode of Tesla Daily. Thank you.